自然的っていうとね、自然力っていうとこう古いもんだと思う人が多いわけよね。
Hi. Many people make this mistake of when you talk about natural, it equals old.
古代的自然力じゃねえんだよ。
But this isn't old nature.
ね、現代的自然力なんだよ。
It's modern nature.
だから現代的な自然力を研究し発見することがね、これ全てのね、今人類に、全ての面でね、大事な時代が来てるんだよね。
It's a very important time for humanity today to find this modern.
Get back to nature.
Get back to nature. Yeah.
You must find this in nature first. This exists, but find it in nature first. Man didn't create fire. Trees rubbed together and made fire. Man observed it, then made fire. Understand the nature of that. Go and find things in nature. And that made us do all sorts of strange journeys to bring this whole thing into what it is. Made me a very much more experienced and wide-thinking person than some of the structured medicine that you taught. I think is becoming too contained, but we won't go into that. But it's not eclectic enough to look at the change in the environments. We need to look at these things, and he encouraged us to go and find these things, but gave us the impetus and the energy to go and the direction to go into.
So true, so true.
人間的学問っていうのは素晴らしいかもしれないけどね。
Even though very human study is actually a great thing.
自然から比べるとね、バカなことをやってる人間が非常に多いのよ。
If you compare it with nature, there's lots of humans doing stupid things.
そうでしょ。例えばね、まあいい方にも悪い方にもつながってるっていうのはね、例えばノーベル賞だよな。あれはダイナマイトだろ。
For example, this connection between good and bad, look at the Nobel Prize, it was started by a man that invented dynamite.
ね、そんでその賞をもらってみんな喜んでんだろ。
And then people are happy when they receive this prize.
みんな目指してんだろ。ね、逆に言えばあれバカな賞だよね。
So when you think about it, it's actually a stupid prize.
そうでしょ。
So even that sort of local knowledge was all part of this understanding the nature of what's around. What flowers would be in season at the moment. If I'm sick, I need this, but it's not in season, so I might have to carry that herb because I can't get it. That kind of thing was part of the medicine.
And the meteorology as well.
Of course.
How you can tell, like birds, if they're flying away, an earthquake is coming. They sense it before it happens. And then at the same time, what we have in the West, cows lay down when it's going to rain. But meteorologically, just noticing them time the differences as well. Same medicine. And the poultices that you rub into wounds and injuries. I remember, again, in the early 80s, getting very, very bruised in the training, and he'd say, oh, go to the onsen. Go and sit in the sulphur baths. And when you come out, the bruising's gone. This is good, just natural medicine.
All these old secrets. Goats drink their own urine. Urine therapy is massive. It's called HichiBuku Kalpa in India. And you would go to the doctor, give him a urine sample, he'd go at the back and put some blackcurrant flavour in it and to take that 3 times a day and get better. We're so weak and so out of touch now. All of that's medicine. Not so much ninja medicine, natural medicine.
ね、核だってそうだろ。核爆弾。
Same with nuclear energy.
ね、だからその人間的に作った力パワーっていうのはね、間違いを起こしやすいよな。のものが一つ半分あるってことだよね。いいことと悪いことが半分ずつあるってことに気づけばいいんだよね。
You should look at this kind of from both sides. Although we have a lot of things that humans invented, humans made, humans developed that are good. On the other hand, a lot of the power that humans make can cause disaster, basically.
だから人間的に俺は善も悪もつながってる同じだっつったのはそこなんだよ。
So like you said earlier about good is connected with bad. It's the same kind of thing.
ね、病気も健康もね、そういうもんなんだよね。そこからやっぱり病気を考えないと。
Sickness and health are the same. They're connected, and we have to think of it this way.
それを中国では陰陽としてね、陰陽として病気の治療に当たったわけ。
Yin-yo is Japanese for yin yang. So you're saying the Chinese think in that way.
I think it's good to go back to your beginning, where we were before we learned from Hatsumi Sensei.
Right. Well, I was practicing osteopathy and looking for softer, more gentler methods of manipulating, in actual fact not manipulating. and there was various disciplines inside of that that were using what we call positional release. It's an exaggeration of the joint, and I was using that to some degree of success. And I'd done 15 years of karate, which is hard thrust, and I'd had enough of that. And a friend taught me to go and start to train in ninjutsu, and we trained for a year before Hatsumi came the first time. And when I saw this man on the field, 20 years older than me, my jaw dropped. And I didn't know that at that time he was also a doctor of Sakotsu, which is Japanese osteopathy. I just went, anybody who moves like that and not a belly dancer, this is what I'm looking for. And he's 20 years older than me, so I thought if I can do that in 20 years' time, I'll be good when I was 1950. I was 36, he was 56, and I went, wow, that's amazing that somebody can do that. And then I learned that he was a Sakotsu doctor, and he said, I put my taijutsu into my work. And I went, oh, right, what does he mean by that? But the taijutsu we did then was very formal, it was very the kamae, because we had to learn the basic steps. But the movements I started to introduce into my practice and found I was getting better results. So I played with that for almost 10 years. And during that 10 years, I came across Chris. That was about 1991. And Hatsumi had done a technique on him on the field and hurt his wrist. And I was the physio for the Taikai. So he shouted, physio. I put my hand over and he came over and he's like, and I said, I saw what happened, you know, da-da-da. And I adjusted his wrist and he went, that's unusual. I went, that's what I do. So we got together, and that's how our journey started together, didn't it?
It is, yeah. Mine started in '86. I went to Japan. My history was that I was actually an ex-member of the parachute regiment, and during a free-fall accident, I crashed, hit the ground, compressed 2 discs, and I had back pain for 9 years. Then I went to see Hatsumi in Japan, and the first thing he did was give me a treatment. And I was like, wow. And then for the next 3 weeks, he gave me treatment. I went back to England, and then I went back to Japan the next year, and he again treated me. And I said to him, would you please teach me your medicine? And he said, if you learn physiotherapy or osteopathy, I will teach you. So I enrolled and did that. And then I met Dennis, and we started working together let's be true. Dennis started teaching me cranial and kinesiology and what he did, then we started to work together.
Yeah. And to build this model, I knew that I was putting taijutsu behind it, and I was doing my best to interpret what Sensei was showing in the dojo, and then making my own interpretations into some of the joints. And I'd seen him do medicine on people that, if they'd hurt themselves, and an arm lock wasn't an arm lock, it was then a reduction. So it was like, right, that's the clues. So I was sort of playing with that. And when Chris and I decided to make this model of it, I said, you know, we need guidance. If we could just get Hatsumi to tell us if what we're doing is the right thing, I'd just feel more comfortable in doing it. So we need guidance. And that instigated the first trip in 1995, where we went, and the initial idea was to literally ask him for guidance. Is it okay to put taijutsu into our medicine? Is this a good way forward?
だから僕は世界的な医学的なね、そういうミステリアスな学問もね、ずいぶん若い頃はね好きでやったんだよ。それ黙ってるだけよ。
So these kind of, you might call mysterious sciences. When he was younger, he was really into that, but he just kind of kept his mouth shut about it.
ね、断食もやったね。断食。青いものも全部食べて飯を食わないで行く人もいる時とかさ、あんだら断食ってね、瞑想だとかさ、もうね、いろんなことやった。
Fasting and meditation, all kinds of things.
ヨガでもやったしね。動因術もやったしね。動因術、中国であるの動因術っていうのがね。
And a Chinese thing called 動因術。
ね。結果的に分かんないでそれを真似してたってね、治療家になれねってことよ。人間をね、治すことができないってこと、それを真似してね、一から勉強したってね、一番さっき言った概論知らなかった、俺が言って。
But no matter how much you might learn all that, you can never heal people because you don't have that base that he was saying. You know that guidon, I suppose, is a kind of foundation. Exactly, yeah.
It's kept emphasising it's this gyron, rather than a little therapy. It's a big picture.
Everything.
We started to show him what we could do. He watched everything we did, and then he said, okay, I will teach you this. And that's when he started to give us treatment in his house, and in the dojo, and even in the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah? He would just show us anything, everything, anywhere. And he just kept offloading about, as we were saying, the gyron.
Yeah. It could be his offhand. I remember one time he had a cup of hot liquid and he said, okay, herbs, heat, a pointo, okay? And then that would be, that's the finish. And so then he'd just go on something, and it was so matter of fact like that. But that was a high level of teaching that you could put herbs into a heat, put them onto a point and treat them, so it didn't matter where you were, you could use these different modalities. But it wasn't a stop, let's give you a lesson on how to do moxibushin or herbs. It was just into what you already know.
It's interesting because as we review some of the footage that we took of Hatsumi Sensei, he mentions like he could only teach us this level because of what we'd already done.
That was his main statement. Because of what you already know, I'm going to teach you.
Yes.
And that was, we were honoured.
だからそれをみんな世界中でなぜ俺の武道を求めたりねしてるかっていうのは分かんないけどもね分かんないから迷ってとにかく俺ごと言うやつもいるわけよね。それが分かってくるとあそうかっていう時期が必ず来るわけよ。
There's lots of people like in his art around the world that don't understand him. And so they're just basically slagging him off all the time, but he knows that one day the day will come where they'll just go,
それはしょうがないでしょ。分かるだけの能力がなかったら俺のものは分からねえだろ。
If they don't have the mind to understand him, then what can he do about it?
俺の武道の一番大事なのは武道家の心が大事だって言うだろ。高松先生がね、武道家の心が一番大事だってよく言ったね。武道になるには技なんかは8段ぐらいでいいと。その先はね、武道家の心あるやつだけだと。前下手じゃない。
As Takamatsu Sensei always used to say, that what is most important in martial arts is the martial artist's mind, the martial artist's heart. It doesn't matter what grade they are, whatever. It doesn't matter about whether they're strong or weak. It's the mind. It's having that martial arts mind.
武道家の心ないければいくら武道うまくたってゴリラなんだよ。
Even if you don't have that martial artist's mind, no matter how good you might get at the art, the physical art, you're just going to finish up as being a gorilla or like Frankenstein or something.
だからそういうのがたくさんまだ武人館にいるわけよ。世界に。
And there's still many people in the Bujinkan around the world like that.
だから変なことやってたらあの野郎フランケンシュタイン武人館フランケンシュタインって言えばいいんだよ。
So if you see anyone strange and doing strange things, just look at them and say, "Oh, he's a Bujinkan Frankenstein." Give him banana. Yeah.
That one of the things he said is you must learn to use every part of your body as a weapon. So in karate we learned that this was an MP and you could put a pine board there and break them and you really thought you were good till you got calluses on your elbows and they're really handy. And you realise that he doesn't use an MP, but if he walks past you and he brushes you with his elbow you'll fall over. If someone punches and his knee's in contact with your leg, it'll go like that and you get flown to the other side of the room. That he could utilise this potency of focal point, one point, anywhere in the body. And most people don't understand that. You realise the spine, with its three curves being upright, is a unique phenomenon to the human. But that potency is just a turbine that puts power to the fingers. These are just for guiding and holding us together. You know, you don't need muscles. And he shows that you don't need muscles. He talks all the time, power, no strength. And when you look at someone 90 who can still do things amazingly that look like they're using strength, you realise that concept is real. And we'll all get old one day and we will lose our muscles. And if you all develop his Mutadori, we'll all be much better off. And that's his heritage, not just in Budo. You know, the whole world should know about his heritage and movement, which is Taijutsu.
It's body movement, yeah.
It's body movement.
だからまあこういうふうに真面目にね話し合えるというまでみんなと成長して俺嬉しいわけだよね。だからこうやって今日は本当のことを話して、やっぱりこれはやっぱり世界人類のためにとても大事なことだと思うのね。今日のトークはね。何でもないのだけどもね。
はい。To be able to seriously talk down like this and talk about things like this is it's important for humanity is basically what he's saying there. It's that was basically.
今真ん中さんの奥さん。
Aha. Say cheese.
これから俺の七福護身術が分かってくるんだよ。
So if you understand this base that he's talking about here, then it'll help you to understand this. Was it HichiBuku Goshinjutsu? Yeah.
ね、でこれ分かんなかったらね、ただ指圧やで終わっちゃうんだよ、そこらの。
If you don't understand that, then it'll finish at shiatsu.
名医でなく終わっちゃうんだよ。グレートのお医者さんじゃないね。指圧だってね、やっぱりこういうふうに勉強していくとね、非常に人間治すために大事なのが分かってくるんだよ。
Basically, if you understand this, you'll become a great doctor.
だから今言った概論が3人とも分かんなかったらよ。俺言った概論が分かんなかったら、何回も何回も聞いてね、この概論が分かんなかったら、七福護身術は分かんないよ。
Let's use this word guidon and translate this later, yeah, but I think probably what it means is the foundation, whatever. If you three don't understand this guidon, then you'll just never get any further. You just won't understand the art at all. No matter how many times you might listen to this video or whatever, and you'll just never get any further if you don't understand that.
これが武道でいう基本八法だよな。
So in Budo, this would be called Kion Happo.
三神の方なんだよ。
Or Sanshin no Kata.
ね、だから七福、武の9つの武の最高のね、急所ポイントね。それの治療法なんだよな。それ中にあからいい間違いしなくて、後でよく。
We'll do that part later, yeah.
ね、これは初めてでこういうことを話したのはね。
Hi, this is the first time he's spoken about this subject actually.
But I think it's also important that what he was saying about the gyron, we were talking earlier, yeah, about how he'd used, he'd learned hypnosis, he'd learned the doin, he'd learned meditation, he'd learned yoga, he'd learned herbal medicine, he'd learned nutrition, he understood acupuncture, osteopathy, chiropractic, physiotherapy, and he was kept emphasizing it's this gyron. Rather than a little therapy, it's a big picture.
Everything. Because one of his biggest ways of diagnosis was, I've got to say it the way he says it, observation.
Like his insistence was, he told us about, there's a famous ninja who taught the first shogun of Japan how every morning to look at his tongue, touch certain points on his body, and then take the tea that's appropriate for him, for that condition. Yeah. So he taught us that observation. In the beginning, I kept saying, well, what point? Which point? How point? And he'd say, go away and learn the points with somebody else. I'm not at college. I haven't got time. So I learned then with a professor of acupuncture, Professor Lai Chi, and that's how I learned the acupuncture points. But I learned to use them by his understanding.
Yeah.
That is the thing.
Also, the other thing he said about the points, I remember, he might be in the dojo and he'd say, okay, get hold, so you get hold of him, and he'd touch you, go, this point, understand? I said, yes, Lajin Tetsin, 11 sensing. But it's what you do with it. And he'd touch it and you'd fall into a collapse. And he'd also say, it's not so much the point, it's the surrounding tissue of the point, and of course what you do to the point. The taijutsu makes the difference. So just pressing isn't really, that's not a medicine, it's the feeling. And it was the biggest thing that he taught us, that he had the time to teach us and spent the most time on, because he knew what we knew already, was the feeling to put in to the Amatsu. And that was the biggest thing.
The feeling is the top one.
Yeah.
The understanding that we had to gain to understand the feeling, that's a different journey.
Yeah.
That's 25 years later.
Yeah.
やっぱりこういうのいただいてるからさ、やっぱりご恩返ししなくちゃいけないからさ、それだけのものをいただいた価値のあることをやっぱり話をしてね、それでやっぱり、人類のためにね、なる皆さんお医者さんになってもらいたいわけ。
After receiving that, he really realizes that he has to teach more of that thing, you know. He has to, for humanity's sake, you know.
そうするとこれがね、非常にね、学校で映したりみんなで見て僕の話を聞いてもらうとね、非常にこういうことがやっぱり基礎で大事なんだなってことをね分かってくれると、皆さんはね素晴らしいお医者さんなんだよ、みんなね。彼はね、だからもっともっとね視野が大きくなるっていうか、ゆとりができてくるんだよな。
Hi. He thinks that if you were to play this, you know, in front of people who are even doctors, you know, that they could become better doctors. They could just take that one step up.
こういうことを今一番僕は大学でもね、どこでも企業体でもね、どこでもね、改めて概論からね、人間の生き方の基本からね、やっぱり知らなくちゃいけないと。
Basically, it's that time is here now that just everyone needs to know this guide on this base, whatever. It could help everything. It could help everyone.
だから基本八法ばかしじゃないの、三振の方ばかしじゃないの。
It's not just Kion Happo. It's not just Sanshin no
これ10代にも教え
Kata.
てないのよこのこと。
He hasn't taught this to any of the 10 stands.
ね、これが分かって基本八法を教えられるし、基本八法を語れる、三振の方を語れるんだよ。
If they understand this point that he's talked about now, then they'll be able to do the Kion Happo. They'll be able to do the Sanshin.
OK？ 大きいんだよね。
It's very big.
じゃないと単なるね、憲法下で終わっちゃうしね、指圧下で終わっちゃうんだよ。
It's if this big point wasn't there, then the martial art would finish at a kempo, and this thing would finish up as shiatsu. It wouldn't get past that point.
ね、だから僕のこういう大きさが分かるとね、ブライアンだってね、ね、誤解が解けるわけよね。俺のやってる行動とか何かがね。ほら俺がやってただろ、いろんなことやってきてんだろ、とブライアンだって、あ、そうかそうかってそういう人だったのかということがみんなやめた人でもね、善良なる心のある人だったらね、みんなわかると思う。
はい。If for example Brian was to know like what things that Sensei's been saying today, and know how big Sensei's knowledge is and how deep his knowledge is in different things. Maybe like people, including Brian, who've left the Bujinkan, maybe would look back and say, you know, I'm missing out on this, you know, because this man's got something.
だからこうやって言霊っていうのね、言霊、語ることは大事なんだよ。お互いに語り合うことは大事なんだよ。
語り合うと。
人間っていうのは言葉があるわけね。ね、言葉っていうのは危険なのよまたね。また言葉っていうのは素晴らしいのよね。だからやっぱり語り合っていい方へ持っていくことが人生でとっても大事ね。だから言霊って言ったのね。言霊。言葉を、トークをね、言霊って言ったの。神のゴードトーク。
God talking, communication with God.
神の言葉ね。
God language or whatever. We'll look into that one again.
だからこの概論が分かってきたらね、あと技術的なことはね、みんなのがうまいんだからさ。
As long as you understand this guide on, he knows that physically you know what you're doing. So as long as you get that understanding.
彼なんかのちょっと技術見て、技術はうまいのもすぐ分かるからね、こんな素晴らしい。
He's seen a bit of your technique and he's very impressed by it.
ね、優しさがあるのよ、彼の見てるとね。
It's got kindness in it.
強引さがないの、こうやっていくとね。経験進まないとそれができないのよ。肩の関節入れんでもね。肩の関節入れんでもね。下手なうちは暴力でやるんだよな。
Hi. Like for example, getting a shoulder joint with shoulder joints. You know, he says if someone's really bad, they can just whack it back in there or something. You know, but
ね、優しさがないの。未熟なやつにやられたら大変だよな。
They've got no kindness there. They've got no.
So, if I think about it, I think of how he would say take hold of the foot, and he'd point out how he could change the angle of just his thumb, but he would show us in a bigger picture of his entire body to, as we said before, about the toe to get to the head. But he would do equally the same. Stand now, when he's standing now, put his finger on somebody's hand and just appear to not move. And suddenly the person's balance is gone. That's the Taijutsu. And that's when we also started to find that the way the martial arts were down, we didn't have to use any pressure at all. Therefore, we didn't have to use any pressure in treatment. And people may say, oh no, that feels like you're really pushing. It's not. It's that they feel it because of the tension in their body in that area.
I would say to them, the touch goes deep. I'm not going deep into your tissue. It just had that impression. But the way the body loads behind it, when you create a focal point of vectors with a taijutsu feeling behind it, it's very, very powerful. And people don't understand that power.
だから僕なんかね、顎入れるのはね、野田でね、俺しか入らない患者さんがいるんだ、一人ね。で、俺辞めちゃったから困るってんだよね。他の人やるとね、お医者さんやるだろ。 20分も30分もかかって顎を入れるんだよね。その人得意なんだよね。顎をはんでる人ね。女の人だけど。
There's a person in Noda that's actually Sensei's the only one that can get his jaw back into place.
で
And
困
he
るんで
says
ね
it。goes all over the place, and it takes him like 20 or 30 minutes for other doctors to get it back into place. So he's like saying, I'm really unhappy that he stopped. That Sensei stopped his practice.
でもその人で電話かけてもいつでも入れてやってるのね。今でも。
So he sometimes calls him still, and he comes round and Sensei will fix him.
だからその人の1秒で入れちゃうからさ、知ってるからさ、くればさ。1秒瞬間に入れちゃう。
He can just do it
痛み
on
ない
the
ね。
spot with no
痛み
pain
ない。
in a second, just like that.
I've seen Dennis do it.
Then it's for.
It was more for us to give an understanding to the students and to separate the different levels.
Yes.
So you'd study the organs and that was a separate. But really, if you do an animal well, you're releasing the liver.
Yes.
You know, so all of the levels mingle. You know, really, it's all Anma.
Yes.
It's all Anma in one sense.
It's all Harry.
Yeah, that's all there is. But the Western world wants bits of paper for this and bits of paper for that and certification and levels. And we've been driven into a place where sometimes I'm not happy with the way it's actually come out, because I know I've been misinterpreted and misunderstood. And I feel that the real essence is what we're talking about here right now, is understanding the body feel, the spirit, the essence of it. And people to go out and actually learn an awful lot more than what they need for an exam. And they're pushed into that. And that sometimes I get a little bit despondent that we try to do a good job and here we are 25 years on, hoping we've done one.
I hear people, I know you hear people, who say, well, I'm an osteopath, so I can do your medicine anyway.
Yeah.
No, it's not that. This is not osteopathy.
Yeah.
Or I'm a physio, so I can do your hammer and Seita. No, that's not it.
And the trouble with all those sciences is that they're linear.
Yes.
And what we were taught is non-linear. But when you propose that to the established bodies, they don't like non-linear. It has to be, well, that's that, and that's into that category, and that's into that category. And unfortunately, Garon doesn't fit into a category.
No, it
It
doesn't.
doesn't fit into a category.
We can use the same thing on horses or dogs. I know you do some now.
Yeah. I've developed a whole therapy based on that. When I was last time in Japan, I discussed it with him, and I said I wanted to call it something to do with triaxial shimmy, because I thought that's what I was doing. He said, no. So first he did me a big painting. He said, this is the god that looks after all horses. So that'll empower you. And I was like, right. And he said, the name should be Uma Shinwa. And I repeated it to him. He said, harmony for the horse. That's the way forward. What you've got to give them back is the harmony. I don't use any manipulation that I used to way back in the 80s when I worked on horses. This is a totally very gentle way, and the horse tells me intuitively where to go and what to do. And I wish people had the same intuitive sense to tell us. I know I have to look a lot harder on a human because they've got so much stuff in the way, whereas a horse just is its senses. And you work with its senses and you realise how close to nature we all are. It just touches in the right place and they almost show you where to touch. It's a privilege to work on a horse.
Yeah.
But that same feeling.
It works the same for a horse or for a dog.
Yeah.
This medicine is remarkable. It will work for humans and animals.
だからやっぱり医学でもね、武道でもそうだよ。こうやってこの人ができるな、武道だって相手がうまいか下手か分かんないのはね、素人なんだよ。だからとやかく俺もと言うやつは素人だと思ってから俺怒らねえのよ。世界中出てたってなんだってね、武道に関してね。言うのは言っとけ、そのうち分かるから2、3年見てろ。やろうがやってれば分かってくる。それが男なんだよね。もう刺激に対してすぐ反応しないね。これがとっても大事なことなんだよね。
Saying about he can look at you and he can see that you're good at what you do, and it's the same way that he has to be able to look at an opponent and say that if he's good at what he does, you have to judge the opponent's skill level.